Well, if President Obama nominates Susan Rice for Secretary of State, she'll face a tough battle in the Senate. Republicans still have questions about her response to the attack on Americans in Libya.
They want to know why she didn't say anything about terrorism. Charlene Israel has the story.
Susan Rice returns to Capitol Hill for round two. Rice faced several of her critics on Tuesday, marching into Capitol Hill, eager to defend her response to the September 11th attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya.
It seems to have been hijacked, let us say, by some individual clusters of extremists.
But her peacemaking visit didn't go as planned. Rice conceded that she incorrectly described the attack in Benghazi as a spontaneous protest gone bad, when it was actually a terrorist attack. But she said she based her comments on the intelligence available at the time. Senators John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and Kelly Ayotte are among the others who have questioned Rice's explanation from the beginning. And they say they're even more disturbed after Tuesday's meeting with Rice.
We are significantly troubled by many of the answers.
The concerns I have are greater today than they were before, and we're not even close to getting the basic answers.
Acting CIA Director Michael Morell accompanied Rice to the meeting and reinforced the perception that the White House can't get its story straight about Benghazi. Morell asserted during the meeting that the FBI modified Rice's talking points by removing a specific reference to al-Qaeda. The FBI quickly denied the statement, claiming it was actually the CIA that made the change. The White House continues to defend Rice, claiming there are no unanswered questions about Rice's comments following the Benghazi attack.
The focus on, some might say obsession on, comments made on Sunday shows seems to me and to many to be misplaced.
If I think that she would be the best person to serve America in the capacity of the State Department, then I will nominate her.
Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Well, you know, ladies and gentlemen, you have to ask yourself with Susan Rice, she's supposed to be a real smart lady, has a degree from a prestigious university. And when that stuff came across, they left out the talking points, but nevertheless, there was every kind of red flag known to man, including the statements of the president of Libya, before she did those talk shows. And why wouldn't she have questioned the, quote, intelligence given to her? I mean, you know, you say, look, guys, this thing doesn't smell right. But she didn't do that. And I don't know why the president put somebody that's that flawed up there. They're going to have a big fight over her, and she'll ultimately go down in flames. So he has the choice of putting John Kerry in, and some people might not like Kerry, but he would get through the Senate without too much trouble. And I'm sure there are other very, very capable people to be Secretary of State. Why take somebody who's a lightning rod and then make a big fight over it? Well, speaking of big fights, we understand the Democrats' position has hardened in relation to these negotiations about the fiscal cliff, and this one is going to be more important than the Secretary of State. This is going to involve the future of the economy, and Lee Webb has that story from the CBN Newsroom. Lee?
Pat, Democrats are deeply divided about whether to include cuts in benefit programs like Medicare and Medicaid in the current budget talks. Those talks, of course, are aimed at avoiding the so-called fiscal cliff. Both sides have mainly talked about raising taxes on high-income Americans, but Republicans and some Democrats also say cuts in expensive programs like Medicare have to be on the table. Other Democrats, however, want to avoid any cuts in those benefits. So far, neither side has been able to find common ground. The question is, Pat, will they?
Well, it's not just common ground, it's common sense. We are getting older as Americans. I am much older right now, before you, as somebody was in the days of Franklin Roosevelt. Roosevelt, you know, looked like the Ancient of Days when he died, but he was only 63 years old, I believe, when he died. And he looked like the old man of the mountain. He had all kinds of diseases, and he smoked a lot and so forth. But nevertheless, people, when they put in Social Security, died by the time they got to be 65. Now they live to 75, 78, 80, 85 years old, and it's not uncommon to see people living into their 90s. So All they've got to do is raise the eligibility age of these programs a few years, because people are no longer dying at 65, nor are they dying at 70. And so in order to keep these programs solvent, they have to do the common sense thing and adjust the age. Big deal. Why can't they do that? Lee?
Pastor Rick Warren says President Obama is, quote, dead wrong on enforcing his health care mandate. That requires organizations to make contraceptions available in their health insurance plan, even if it's against their religious beliefs. Pastor Warren spoke with CBN's David Brody on this week's The Brody File program, and he says he told the president directly of his opposition to the requirement.
I clearly told the president and the White House I 100% disagree with him, and actually said I would fight him on this issue of religious liberty, because he's dead wrong on it. The most important freedom in America is the first freedom, and the first freedom is religious liberty. America was founded by people who came here for that freedom, not anything else, but for the freedom of religion. It is the first sentence, the first phrase of the first sentence of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, the right to free exercise of religion.
Warren gave the invocation at President Obama's inauguration 4 years ago. By the way, you can see more of David Brody's interview with Pastor Warren on The Brody File Friday at 9:30 a.m. on the ABC Family Channel. Two retiring Republican senators have introduced a bill to, as they put it, get the ball rolling on the thorny issue of immigration reform. Senators Kay Bailey Hutchison and John Kyle's Achieve Act would give legal status to children of illegal immigrants.
Yes.
The children would have to go to college or join the military. It would be for those now under the age of 28 who came to America before they were 14.
These young people are in a situation where they've known really only American life, and you say go home and they say we are home.
We have to get this ball rolling. We have to have a discussion that is sensible, that is calm, that discusses all of the different aspects of the issue, and this particular part of immigration reform seemed a logical place to begin.
Many Republicans are now jumping on the bandwagon for immigration reform. Since the election, Mitt Romney received only 27% of the Hispanic vote. Some Latino activists already oppose Hutchison and Kyle's bill. They say it only offers a legal status, not a guaranteed path to citizenship. Teenage actor Angus Jones is now apologizing for calling the CBS comedy 2.5 Men filth. Jones plays the character of Jake on the show. He said he had a spiritual awakening and that he no longer wanted to play the role. He even encouraged viewers not to watch the program anymore and to, quote, please stop filling your head with filth. Now he's issued a statement saying, I apologize if my remarks reflect me showing indifference to and any disrespect of my colleagues and a lack of appreciation of the extraordinary opportunity of which I have been blessed. The United Nations will vote tomorrow on a measure that would upgrade the Palestinian status at the UN. But some countries, like the U.S. and Israel, oppose the plan. They say it would only hurt chances for any real peace in the region. Chris Mitchell has that story now from Jerusalem.
Israel, the U.S., Canada, and a handful of countries are opposing Palestinian Authority head Mahmoud Abbas's bid for non-member state status at the UN. The PLO sent out this clip of a CNN interview saying Hamas and all Palestinians are united.
So we really have unanimous total support for going to the UN, the General Assembly, and for getting the upgrade to state status.
Ashrawi says the move will determine the boundaries of a Palestinian state and its claim to Jerusalem.
So this is a very significant step. It will enable us to interact with the rest of the world on the basis, at least a minimal basis of parity and equality.
The move is largely symbolic. Foreign Ministry spokesman Yigal Parmor says it's meaningless legally, but it will probably embolden Palestinians not to negotiate peace with Israel.
The Palestinians are fundamentally breaching the existing agreements, so that's not good. And this vote will certainly be no incentive for them to return to the negotiations.
Ironically, the action comes 65 years to the day after Arab nations rejected a UN resolution calling for a Jewish and an Arab state. That's when Britain controlled this area. Israel has fought a number of wars during those 65 years for its survival and says there's no going back.
You can't just tell us, okay, we fought against you all those years, we've lost battle after battle. You know what? Okay, let's get back to the start.
Middle East expert Daniel Pipe says the move is negative for both Israel and the Palestinians, but the end of the Oslo peace process might not be so bad.
The possibility that this will shatter Oslo and end it is not a negative one.
Pipe says the move shows Abbas's desperation because he's not succeeding at anything else.
Mahmoud Abbas is going to the UN as part of his rival with the Hamas movement, in part as a way to do harm to Israel. But I don't think it's well thought through.
In the end, he says, it's probably another case of the Palestinians trying to hurt Israel even if they hurt themselves more in the process. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Pat, it's being viewed as merely symbolic, but is it really?
Well, symbolism plays a large role up in the United Nations. The General Assembly of the UN is clearly against Israel. It is very much pro-Arab, and they keep passing all these nonsensical resolutions. And, you know, we have power in the Security Council, but I think the whole United Nations framework that was set up after World War II is antiquated. It should be replaced with something else. I have suggested a community of democratic nations where we actually joined in with people who are democracies and did not allow membership for those who are dictatorships. And I think what's happening now, the Chinese have a veto, the Russians have a veto, the U.S. has a veto, the Security Council can change the vote of the General Assembly, and what they're asking for is something in the General Assembly which in a sense is meaningless but at the same time has a great deal of propaganda value. And since they're refusing to negotiate a bilateral treaty with Israel, which is what they've agreed on in the past, it renders peace talks nullified or moot. So what are they doing? Are they hurting themselves? Yes, the Jews won't have negotiated with them, but it's just one more way of stirring the pot in the Middle East. Lee?
Staying active as you age could help prevent Alzheimer's and dementia. Researchers reported that seniors who stay active on a daily basis have 5% more gray matter than people who are less active. Having more gray matter translates into a lower risk of Alzheimer's. More than 35 million people worldwide are living with dementia. That number is expected to double by 2030. Physical activity can be anything from raking leaves to riding a bicycle. The areas of the brain that benefit from that physical activity are the ones that consume the most energy and are sensitive to damage. Pat?
Horseback riding. Everybody should ride horses.
Because we all have one, Pat.
Everybody has one in the backyard. Get one, put him in your garage instead of a car, and ride him around the block.
I love how optimistic you are that everyone has a horse, but everyone can have a bike.
All right, well, they can have a bike if they want to and move along, and they can also have a set of weights, and I've got a set of weights. So
that's true.
The weights do not eat oats, and they just sit up there real quietly until you lift them up in the air and put them down again. And
now, what do I always tease you about when it comes to the horse? What's the thing I always tease you about?
Because I look so good riding him?
No, I always tease you and say, you always talk about the greatest exercise is riding a horse, when technically the horse is doing all the exercise.
You do more than you realize.
Really? Okay.
You have to, at least your thighs get exercise because you have to go up and down posting. Okay, but
I'll give it to you.
I'm all for horses. The outside of a horse is good for the inside of a man.
9 people are dead after an attack on a Christian village in central Nigeria. That word from the head of the Christian advocacy group, the Stephanos Foundation. Witnesses say gunmen in army uniforms fired weapons from a speeding van. Police say they're investigating the incident, but tensions are high between the region's Christian South and Muslim North. Hundreds have died in the violence between the two sides in the last few years. More mass protests in the streets of Egypt because of President Mohamed Morsi's power grab. More than 200,000 people flocked to Tahrir Square Tuesday evening. They demanded Morsi revoke decrees granting him dictatorial powers. Clashes erupted between young protesters throwing stones and police firing tear gas. Protesters accuse Morsi of trying to make himself an all-powerful ruler like former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. Morsi is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. He has no plans, he says, to step down. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.